Hi there. How are ya? Charlotte Chaney, and this is Soul Connections Live. It is August 6th, 2018, and tonight we are going to talk about fear. So I would really love it if you're there, if you can interact. I'm going to try and read and kind of share what I've learned here at the same time. So I've just been doing a little bit of research on fear and realizing, hey, Gina, that there's some just kind of made a list of some things about fear. One is maybe fear of failure. That's something that I think I struggle with around fear of rejection, fear of death, spiders, cats, disease, getting older, losing a child, experiencing trauma, maybe re experiencing a trauma that you had before, fear of war. Maybe some of us are just flat out fear of uh, North Korea, food poisoning, germs. Perhaps people are fearful of getting caught from something they've done in their past that they're just hiding. Um, and, maybe some people are afraid of pooting in front of their boyfriend. Just saying, Brian and I are first dating and, being the rectal cancer survivor that I am. So, I am reading this book and it's called It Didn't Start With You: How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who You Are and How to End That Cycle. Is really, really fascinating about how maybe somebody in our lineage has faced a trauma and we're dealing with it in our life. And it's got all this scientific and even biblical stuff backing it up. It's really fascinating. So maybe Gina can, hey, Tiara, write that into the comments. Maybe it's called It Didn't Start With You. So I was to talk a little bit about fear in my life. So I was talking to a friend today about fear, and she's like, well, how like you felt fear when you were diagnosed with cancer. And I was like, well, I didn't really have fear when I was diagnosed with cancer. And she's like, well, what about when you were bleeding? And I'm like, no, I didn't really have fear then either. And I started thinking, I really don't have a lot of fear in my life, but I did. I did have fear. And so I think back to my third pregnancy with Blake. He was born in 97. And I remember this just being so fearful all the time. And I would watch the news and I would see these stories happen and I would just know it was going to happen to me. Like there was a carjacking or it didn't matter what it was, some rare disease or whatever, and I was just so worried it was going to happen to me, and I was in a constant state of fear, and I felt it right here in my heart and my chest. And when I received the Lord as my personal Lord and Savior, which I'm not going to get into today how that happened, but that went away, and it was replaced with this faith and this peace, and they call it the peace which passes understanding. And that's what I experienced when my relationship with God, and it really replaced the fear. And so when I became diagnosed with cancer or started bleeding rectally or whatever, I was aware that I had a God who had my back and was going to provide. Even if I were to die, I know that God's going to provide for me. So that's my foundation as I walk through life. I do still have fear of things will hit me, and I have to kind of go through a process of reminding myself that, oh wait, God's got this. I can let it go. So, or yeah, sometimes it takes longer than others, but just doing a little research on fear. Fear and anxiety, they can last for a little while or they can last for a long time. And in some cases, fear can just take over your life, and it can affect your ability to sleep and to concentrate, to travel. Some people get so bound in fear they can't leave their home. And that it can affect their health, and so it can be a very debilitating thing. And what I learned also is that often people are not afraid of the thing that they're afraid of as much as they are afraid of the sensation of feeling fear. And so, and that's kind of comes to light when you realize maybe I experience fear around staircases. I have kind of an abnormal fear about staircases. But I'm not thinking that the staircases aren't safe. because I'm letting my children go on them, and I think some people have that. I was talking to a friend who's got a fear of vomit, and maybe that is not a really rational fear. She's not afraid, like, she's not going to protect her child or children from vomiting, right? It's just like that's just something that she's dealing with. So it's really not the fear of the thing, but the fear of feeling fearful. And so that when we feel fear, our body totally shoots into action, doesn't it? I can just identify with these things. Your heart will race fast. Your muscles kind of become weak. You'll maybe sweat a lot. You'll feel loose bowels. It's hard to concentrate on anything else. You'll feel dizzy and sort of frozen, right? Sometimes fear will just paralyze us and we'll just feel stuck where we are. You can't eat. You might get the cold sweats or a dry mouth or tense muscles. So it could just really take over your body. With anxiety, you may also then get irritable, have trouble sleeping, develop headaches, and having trouble working and planning for your future. So that's a big deal. If you're having a hard time planning for your future, that's a problem. So a panic attack is something that comes on and it makes it when it's hard to breathe. And you might worry that you're having a heart attack because you can feel it in your chest and you lose all control of your body. And it's so horrifying to feel out of control. And I think that's sort of what stems with a lot of fear with us anyway. A phobia is something that you're just afraid of, and I think people have very irrational phobias, or like claustrophobia is when you're afraid of being in a tight space. People are afraid of arachnophobia, I think is what it is being afraid of spiders. I know a girl who's afraid of cats. I'm pretty afraid of snakes. So, fear is not really a rational thing. And so what I learned in studying fear is that most people try to protect themselves from that object that they're afraid of. So, for example, if I'm afraid of snakes, well, I'm going to avoid them. I'm going to, stay in an environment where there aren't snakes. And so in doing so, I am weakening myself and I'm limiting my life because, well, I don't really want to go hiking because what if there's snakes out there? When in reality, if I stop and I faced my fear and I grew into it, I would become stronger and more confident, and I could deal with it and I could really address my fear. So I wanted to do a little bit of talk about that, about how avoidance guarantees that the feared object will remain a big deal. Okay, so the further you distance yourself from the thing that you're afraid of, the bigger it becomes. The word novel is what they're using. Also, when you start avoiding something like snakes, it can get generalized over time. So for example, I don't want to, hi Diane, I don't maybe want to go hiking because there might be a snake there. Well, that might lead to, well, I don't really want to go in my backyard because what if a snake's back there? And so then you find yourself isolated in your home. And that happens to people. They get stuck right on in their home because they have let these fears of these things grow and become generalized. So what I've learned from what I've been reading is that exposure to the fear is actually the most potent medicine known to psychology. And I read it and I'm going to take it seriously. And I think because I am afraid of snakes, I am going to go see some snakes and spend some time with them and realize it is not okay for me to not go hiking or camping or, miss out on that part of life because I'm afraid of this. And so maybe your fear is I don't know what I know. I have one of my friends who's terrified of cats and I'm thinking, wow, you're missing out on this really cute little animal, but I want to have her over my house. I have a cat. And she's missing the opportunity to come and be here because of my cat. And so that's disappointing. And so I wanted to share with you kind of a recent fear that I had. And I blogged about it last week. So I don't know if you've seen it on charlottesoul.com, but if you go to my blog tab, you can see it. And so going through the divorce with my ex-husband has been very, very challenging. And then God gave me my new husband who lives an hour and a half from Annapolis, where I raised my kids. And so it's so complicated to have me here. And then their dad is in Annapolis, and that's where they grew up. And so um, I have had a fear of losing them or having them not be in my space or love my home or want to participate in my life here in Frederick. And so it really became overwhelming for me this summer. And so I had only one choice, and I needed to let it go. I couldn't I could no longer, manipulate the environment to make them want to be here. I mean, for one thing, they feel that. They can feel that when I'm like, oh, trying to make it so special for them to be here. And I think that's awkward. And, it's not, I'm manipulating my environment to help alleviate my fear is not going to make the thing go away. And so what I had to do was I had to give it up to God, and I had to say, God, and it was not easy. So I had to really dedicate myself to God and get in his word and let him speak to me and recognize he is the only one in my life that is going to truly love me fully and wholly, despite all the things that I do wrong. And he is the only one that is really going to provide for me. And I can't count on anyone. And I really can't even count on my wonderful husband. I really can only count on God. I can enjoy my husband who provides for me and is there for me. And he is, oh man, he really is. But I can't just bank on that and just say, this is how it needs, that's it. I got him, so I'm good to go, because I don't know God's plan for us or for him. And he could disappear, he could die. And I can't be dependent on that. I can only be dependent on God, because he is not ever going to change. So I was reading a little bit from Jordan Peterson, who is a clinical psychologist and a real powerful thought leader right now. My children have introduced me to him, and he wrote the book 12 Steps to Overcoming Chaos, I think. And he says, you don't deal with fear by making the world safer. You break the fear into bits and you face it piece by piece. So one of the examples he gave us was, he said, let's imagine someone is fearful of meeting new people. And so they're scared of meeting people. Well, he would say, don't go avoid meeting new people. But he would say, do you know how to shake someone's hand? And so that person might say, no, I've really never shaken someone's hand before. So he'll say, let's start there. Let's start somewhere small. And I love his idea. So, a lot of psychologists will say, face your fear, but he'll say, break it up. Hi, Kathy. Oh, Kathy, how are you? Jordan Peterson says, break it up into smaller pieces so that, it's not overwhelming and you can just do a little bit at a time. And I love that idea. And so there's some other examples here. So, exposure is not easy. However, living in the prison of avoidance isn't easy either. So it's really, there's not an easy way of dealing with your fear. You live with it and avoid it, and it grows and it manifests, and it really can be debilitating, as I talked about earlier, or you face it. And that is, I've heard about these people that are fearful of flying, and they go and these classes and they have to ride in airplanes. Oh, and I feel for them because it's hard, but I think it's truly what we need to do. So a lot of people think, if I can just manipulate my world from my fear, then I'll be in good shape. And so I happen to know of a mother I recently had a contact with who, her daughter had a panic attack in the middle of the night and was having these complete fears. And the mother is a teenage girl, and the mother was like, well, let's set the environment up so that when that fear comes up that this won't happen again. And what I'm reading from these psychologists, in particular Jordan Peterson, is no, don't do that. Don't protect your child from their fear. Teach them to stand up to the fear. Teach your children to face the fear and say, hey, you know what, this is okay. I'm in my room and I'm safe, and I know my parents are right there or whatever, and it's okay, and I can face this fear. We don't want to be the type of parent who's like, okay, let's set the arrangement up so that that fear is hidden and knocked away, and that child can just stay weak. No, you want that child to be strong, because if your child's facing a fear at 14 of the dark or whatever, there's those fears are going to be bigger when they're 21 and 25. And so we want to be strong, and we got to face these things, and it's hard, but it makes us strong. So let's see. These are some really cool examples of overcoming fear that I found. One is from wakeupcloud.com, and I'm going to read a couple of them. There were 33 of them, so I'm not going to read you all of them, but one of them was, if you are aware that just be aware that your fears are wreaking havoc. So recently I was with someone, and I could tell that person had OCD, and was unable to have the evening that we were having, because of this situation. And I'm like, does that person recognize that fear is debilitating? Or does sometimes your fear just becomes a part of you, and you don't want to let it go because you don't know who you are without it? And I can tell you from the trauma that I have been through, I get that. I understand that I have, like, it was very hard for me. I had to come out of denial with a bunch of stuff in my life, and I had to go with a counselor and work on that and say, hey, listen, I realize now that what was so obvious in my life wasn't at the time, and I was hiding it, and I need to now see it, and it was scary, and I had to go through it. But understanding that these things in our lives, we can't just hide and pretend that it's okay. It's okay that I do this weird habit or whatever, that I have this tradition or this thing that other people don't know. That's a problem. You need to address it. So get specific of exactly what you're afraid of. So if you're afraid of snakes, what is it? Am I afraid of touching them? Am I afraid that they're going to bite me? Am I afraid that they're going to sliver on my arm? Or what is it exactly that I'm afraid of, so that I can get in touch with it? So it's not some big thing hanging out up here, but it's something that I'm actually aware of. Get curious, and what thoughts generate my fear? So is it because maybe sometimes we're feeling a fear of something that has really nothing to do with that, but it's something else that kind of triggered it and brought it on. When you center yourself on the now, and this, if you go to this website, wakeupcloud.com, they give you links to these other things too. And so it says, if you center yourself on the now, you'll realize how everything is. And you also realize that you're kind of okay with how things are. I remember one person telling me one time about the theory of, if everybody took their problems and threw them up in the air, would you want someone else's problems? And no. I mean, even though mine are really, really bad, I don't want someone else's, because I know mine. And so when I'm aware of where I am and what I have, and just, understanding that I'm okay even with these things going on now. And so I'm going to be okay with wherever I head. I just can't leave that in fear. So therapy. So I recently talked to a friend who is terrified. She's pregnant, and she's terrified of losing her baby, which I think is a very common fear, particularly for people who have lost a baby, and then another baby, they're pregnant again, and they're fearful of losing that baby. And that's hard. And so, my thought for her was, well, what if you could find a therapist and you could walk the journey of, what if you lost the baby, and get a look at that space and see that you actually could handle it. And hopefully, Lord willing, that baby's not going to die. But the thing is, if it does, it's not actually worth all that fear. And um, so we can deal with our fear. We can do these things. There's lots of things on that list. Coaching is a good thing, although coaching is not counseling, so being mindful of that. But prayer, and so one thing I read in Entrepreneur magazine was, do one thing every day that scares you. It says living in our comfort zone is not the best way to live. Not doing things that frighten you will increase the likelihood that your fears become bigger and take over your life. It can even be something small that you choose to do, but do something daily that scares you and step out of your comfort zone and work on becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. When you form the habit of doing something daily that scares you, your courage will grow little by little. And so that was really the underlying thing I've learned from a lot of these psychologists is we need to grow in our courage as we face these things, as we deal with these things. And when you form the habit of, soon enough, the barriers that once were holding you back vanish and your potential maximizes tremendously. So how can I help myself? Face the fear if you can. Know yourself. Know your anxiety and your fear. Try to learn more about fear and anxiety and keep a record of when it happens so you know like what's triggering it. Exercise. Brian and I have been so busy in the last 3 weeks that I have not been able to do my exercise routine, and I have gotten really depressed, kind of just sort of like just melancholy and not wanting to go do things that I ordinarily want to do. And I realize exercise physiologically makes you feel better. So we all need to commit to it and say, I'm going to do this and do it and don't give up on it. Also relax. Relaxation is very important, and I do that regularly too. Eating healthy, something that I work on. It says avoid alcohol or drink in moderation. I know drinking too much alcohol can really aggravate depression and anxiety and stress, and maybe it feels good right at first, but you wake up in the morning and you realize all the time you've lost if you've had too much to drink or anything like that, and that's very stressful and causes anxiety. There's complementary therapies like exercise, relaxation techniques, meditation, yoga, tai chi also deal with anxiety. Faith and spirituality. So that is something I'm going to talk about in 1 second, but talking therapies, which would be counseling, behavioral therapies, medication. So it's okay to take medication if you need it. Support groups, and I personally have found a lot of help in Al-Anon, which is the sister to Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you love someone who is abusing a substance, it is a really great place to go and learn a little bit about yourself and how you're handling that person's addiction, because it can be debilitating when you love someone. So wanted to share what I do when I'm feeling fearful. So I go to God, and that's the only place I can go. And I know that it's the place to go. I've been there over and over and over. He's never let me down. And I can't believe the times that I don't go there. And I'm like, why did I wait so long to come here, Lord? But what I do is I think about Psalm 27, verse 5, that says, for he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble, and he will conceal me under the cover of his tent, and he will lift me high upon a rock. And I tend to just feel myself hidden in God's rock wall. Like there's this, cliff, and there's a space in it, and I'm in there, and he's hiding me, and I just feel it, because I know that he's capable of doing that. So Psalm 91, and I had a friend tell me this, she said, Psalm 911. So Psalm 91:1, and it's really worth the whole read. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. But he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wing you will find refuge. His faithfulness, his shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. No evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. There you go, that serpent. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him, and I will be with him in trouble, and I will rescue him and honor him. With my long life, I will satisfy him and show him in my salvation. Hi, Jen. I remember the times that God has saved me in the past. I remember the time that I heard I had stage 3 rectal cancer. And I look at how I am here today. I remember the times when I wanted to die because the pain was so bad. And I look at how healthy and vibrant I am today. And I think about my painful first marriage and the times that I wanted to die in that relationship, and how he got me through it, and how he provided for me. And you know, I know people could say, well, that was just luck, or well, it was good medical care or whatever, but I know that it was my God. I know that I didn't face fear when I heard that diagnosis, because I went and I hid in that cleft, and I went and hid under the wing of my God. And I, you know, we can all do that. And so I hope that this will bless you, and that you will find comfort in some of these techniques, and certainly in God, and knowing that he loves you. The one other thing that I have felt fear over in my life has been maybe in relationships, particularly in my previous marriage, where I felt oppressed, and I didn't feel like I could stand up for myself. And I didn't think I had to, actually, because I read in Romans 12, beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. And I clung to that so many times in that marriage when I was so hurt, and I wanted to fight back, or but I was really discouraged from standing up for myself because of my faith. But God did protect me, and he will repay. If he hasn't already, I know that he will. And so that's just something I can rest in. So anyway, thank you for being here, and feel free to call me or reach out to me. And I know so many people deal with fear, and it's valid and it's real. And I hope there's nothing that I've said that's made it not seem real or made it seem like it's trivial. It's not. It's a really big deal, and that's why we're addressing it tonight. And I just want to encourage you to take the steps to move through it, so that you can become your full self, the full version of yourself. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'm going to pray for you. Dear Lord, I just lift before you whoever is here with me right now or later. And in your presence, Lord, I just ask that this person would understand that there's nothing that they've ever done that could separate them from your love, as there's nothing I've ever done that could separate me from your love. Lord, I just ask that whoever is here would just feel your presence, and they would feel that protection that you give me, Lord. And Lord, maybe it's someone that needs to confess some sin because they're afraid to be in your presence because of something they've done, Lord. And that happens, right? We all have to do that, Lord, to get into your presence. We confess our sin, and you say that our sin is forgiven. So it's not like you're going to bring it back up again. You won't. In fact, you said you won't, and you're so true to your word, God. And I just ask that your blessing be here, Lord, and that you bring peace, the peace which passes all understanding, Lord. If you would just fill us with that peace, Lord. And thank you so much, Jesus, and I love you. So I am going to try and come back here every Monday. I'm going to come up with a little schedule of topics that we're going to talk about. And I'm hopefully going to put out a blog post this week, kind of summarizing some of these topics and some of these quotes, some of these ideas. So thank you so much for being here. God bless you.